Welcome to the first episode of Two and a Half Takes. I'm your host, Paul. Today I'm joined with my co-host, Tim. Today we're going to be discussing our biggest winners and losers from the 2023 NFL Combine, as well as taking a look at our current big boards. And then end of the show, we'll be doing a full first-round mock draft with a snake draft style. Enjoy.
Let's get it going, Paul. I just want to kick things off. You mentioned our 2023 Combine winner and loser. So I have a few guys that I have listed down here. It looks like you have a few listed on your end. So I'll let you go ahead and kick it off. Who are your biggest winners from this weekend?
All right. So I'm going to start off here with a couple honorable mentions. I think they greatly improved their draft stocks, but they're definitely not going to be any big name players, or they may have some role time, but not expecting a jump into first round. First, I'm going to start off with Matt Landers, 6'4" wide receiver from Arkansas. He's their team leader in receptions. He started off at Georgia and then transferred to Toledo and then finished up his senior year at Arkansas. Like I said, he was their starting leader, but he did run a 4.3 or 4.39 40 at the combine. Definitely improved his draft stock there. And then secondly, honorable mention, I got Bryce Ford Wheaton, wide receiver out of West Virginia University. Another 6'3" wide receiver who ran a 4.38 40, really blazing there. And he also had a 40-plus inch vertical jump. And my last winner from the combine is Darnell Washington, absolute monster of a man, tight end from Georgia Bulldogs. 6'7". He ran an impressive 4.65 40, again at 6'7", and he's like 250, 260. He's regarded as one of the best blocking tight ends. He was one of the only tight ends that could actually legitimately move the sled. And he also ended off the route running portion of it with a one-handed catch. So it kind of puts a lot of hope in that he's not just a big body out there that can block. He can also catch. So it's very scary. What do you think about those honorable mentions there, Tim?
Yeah, no, I think they're great. I think with Bryce Ford Wheaton, the production wasn't really there at West Virginia, but I think that he does have the build and the speed and athleticism that could really translate to the next level. We'll go ahead and see. I mean, again, Big 12, those receivers can come and go, but again, having that blazing speed could really, really produce and hopefully bring him onto a roster spot. Maybe it's a mid-day 3 or even potentially late day 2 pick. I also do love Darnell Washington, which you have there as an honorable mention. Again, I think that this guy could be a monster if put in the right system. Potentially is almost a sixth offensive lineman out there, which is kind of a little bit of an advantage when it comes to the run game too. But yeah, no, I think that those are great honorable mentions, Paul. So let's go ahead and kick it off. What would you say is your biggest, or at least your noted winners from the 2023 NFL Combine?
All right, I have two notable winners. First one being Zach Kuntz out of Old Dominion. He was the fourth overall prospect coming out of high school. He originally went to Penn State University. He sat there for a couple years. He was behind Pat Freiermuth, who's in the NFL, and he's one of arguably the best young tight ends in the league at the moment. But Kuntz really put his name on the map for anybody that did not know who he was, because nobody's watching Old Dominion out there except for Old Dominion alum. Kuntz is 6'7". He was a high school hurdler. He had a 40-inch vertical and ran a 4.55 40. That is an absolute weapon out there. He did line up a lot from the slot, looking back at his stats. But that's where I think he can be in the next. He kind of looks like a faster, more athletic Travis Kelce, I might say. Not much of a blocker. He's big enough, but he's definitely more of an athlete rather than a true football player. Some of his tape, he doesn't look as fluid. That's his biggest critique. That's probably why he's not going to be the number one tight end taken. He's definitely not polished, but he's an athlete, and he's got height, or now he has height built around him, and he's got that baseline where you can kind of really mold him and get some route running into him and work on his catching. And I think that's where he's definitely going to succeed. He was pretty productive with his 2 years at Old Dominion. First season, he had 73 catches, about 700 yards, 5 touchdowns. I don't know their offense, so I don't know exactly if they go to the tight end. A lot of tight end productivity is scheme based, so some teams may not use him as much as others. Um, the one reason that I think his name has kind of gone under the radar is he did get hurt this past season. He tore up his knee, I believe. So he only had 12 catches, 140 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But the biggest thing with the knee injury is you wonder how he's going to perform afterwards. And I think his combine, where he jumped 40 inches and ran a 4.55, I think that kind of relieved a lot of the doubters that okay, he can perform. He's healthy again. So I think he was definitely a winner from that tight end group.
Yeah, no, I like that. Again, I think he had a killer combine. Yeah, again, the production was present. I think that when you're playing at Old Dominion, there's always an ability to perform above expectation as compared to some of our other prospects here. But again, I think that this guy, being at his size, is he 6'7", 6'8", 250 pounds. I mean, this guy has, I think, a great NFL mold to really kind of just put in your tight end room and hopefully have them sit behind and learn for a few years before giving them that opportunity.
All right, and moving down to my number 2 winner of the day, we're going back to a 6'8" tackle out of BYU. We have Blake Freeland. Athleticism doesn't mean everything for the tackle position. There's a lot of technique that goes into it, but he is the most athletic tackle ever. He ran a 4.9840 with a 1.68 10-yard split, which 10-yard split is more important than the actual 40. Linemen don't really need to be running 40s. He also had a 40-inch vertical, which is the highest recorded ever vertical from a offensive lineman. He's also 300 pounds. Like, that is insane. He had a very good shuttle time as well. He can move laterally. I don't know his exact stats and how well he performed. I know he had some BYU. They throw the ball around, so he's probably got a lot of passing tape. But just athletically, this dude is a freak.
I like that. Again, I think that this guy is kind of going under people's radars. I think that he had a little bit of hype going into this year. Performed okay. I think he had a little bit of a rocky season for, I believe it was for his senior year. But I will say this, man, athleticism, I think that really can translate. I think that this guy's a pretty good pass blocker. I think he does need to probably work on being the height that he is on the run blocking side of things. But I think that if you're a team that is really looking to potentially replace your right tackle, I think this guy might be a good, solid, plug and play starter for you. Hopefully coming in on your day 2 pick.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of reminds me of from last year's draft a little bit, is like Abraham Lucas. Another guy that was pretty tall, pretty long frame. Long arms, big hands, and I think that Abraham Lucas also tested out pretty well, but obviously not nowhere near as good as Blake Freeland. Man, this guy's an absolute monster.
Absolute stud. Well, let's go ahead and move on to your winners of this draft. Let's see what you got.
Yeah, man. So kicking it off, obviously, it's easy to go with some of the easy wins like a Nolan Smith or Kalijah Cansey, but yeah, I really gotta give props to some of these guys that really worked hard in producing for this combine. So I really got to kick it off with Marvin Mims, man. So this guy came in, he was bigger than Hollywood Brown, coming in at 5'11", about 195 pounds. Again, his college production was there. So, I mean, it's not like this guy is coming into the combine, testing out well, and when you look at the tape, there's not much tape to be had. I mean, this guy was a threat. He was an absolute weapon in that Oklahoma offense that also produces some good legacy, or has a good legacy and a good track of producing wide receivers. But yeah, so I'll kick it off with Marvin Mims, man. Again, 39.5 inch vert, 4.3840. Again, a 10.9 broad jump. again, I know that the broad jump wasn't anything outstanding, but at 5'11", 185, 190 pounds, I mean, this guy really came in and truly, truly blew the top off of offenses, showing that, again, he's not just, a guy that can, I guess can't just keep up as I'm just a Bernie. I mean, this guy ran well. He did the three cone pretty well. And again, I really think what gets me is that vertical, man. This guy could potentially, I think, start off in the slot and eventually potentially make his way to be an outside wide receiver in the NFL.
I like that pick. I do think he was one of the standouts of a rather lackluster class for wide receivers, at least for the combine. Not everybody ran. A couple people injured. A couple people just chose to sat out. So you don't have numbers on everybody, but I do think he was. I would agree with he was definitely a winner. He improved his draft stock. I think he's put his name up into that top 5 wide receiver category.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think that he's one of those names that if going into the draft, I think that a lot of people had this guy going as a late day 2 to potentially a day 3 pick, right? But I mean, if you really take a look at it, man, this guy's produced all 3 years he was at Oklahoma. I think that again, a lot of that kind of translates to the NFL when provided that he did get a lot of his reps there in the slot. But I think that if you get this guy into an NFL weight room, he might be able to pack on. I mean, it looks like when I see his frame, man, he does look a little skinny. I think that Oklahoma does a great job with their strength and conditioning program, but I wouldn't be surprised if he could pack on another 10 pounds to really help develop and perform to be an NFL wide receiver on the outside. But yeah, man. So I really would say Marvin Mims again, great standout. My second guy that I have to go with is Christian Gonzalez. So going into the combine, I know a lot of people had Devin Witherspoon as their solidified number 1 cornerback. I think that Devin Witherspoon, I'm not taking anything away with him. I think that he is a great prospect. I still have him as my cornerback 1, but Christian Gonzalez going into this draft, man, you're talking about a 6'1", 200-pound corner that did a 4.3840 and had a 41.5-inch vertical, man. This guy is a freaky athlete. He had an 11.1 broad jump, dude. He has 32-inch arms, and he was still able to bench press 14 reps. I mean, dude, this guy has the tape. Besides that start of the season, I believe it was against the national champions, the Georgia Bulldogs. I mean, if you take away that game and that performance, I mean, this guy was pretty locked down. I think he had 4 interceptions for the year. I think that he could fit a lot of different systems. But to me, man, I think that, again, when you have that level of athleticism on the outside to play cornerback, man, you can't go wrong there. So again, I think that Devin Witherspoon, still a great player. He's still my cornerback number 1, but I would not be surprised if Christian Gonzalez is right there as a 1B, potentially even a 1A for some people's boards.
I love that pick. I do think Christian Gonzalez, he is my number 1 corner. Production was there. He didn't have a lot of interceptions, but that's just because he didn't get thrown to that much. They knew not to throw his way, and he kind of locked it down. And then that 40 time and that size measuring at 6'1", 200 pounds for a corner, that is insane. That is, I mean, he just puts it all. He ticks all the boxes for me right there. I think he's a day 1 top 10 lock, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Paul. I agree with you there. So now that we talked about some of my winners, man, it's time to kick it off to the losers. Easy one here for a loser. Keyshawn Butte, man. I mean, this guy came in undersized. LSU had him listed at 6 foot 205. For him only coming in at 5'11", 195, that kind of had a little bit of a concerning factor on my end, being that, if you're going to come in a little undersized, then you better perform in the combine. And this guy didn't do that, man. He ran a 4.540, which is fine, but his vertical jump was only 29 inches, and his broad jump was only 9 foot 10 inches. I mean, dude, this guy came in undersized. I was thinking, okay, he could be running into the 4.4s. I was expecting at least a 35-inch vertical out of this guy, and potentially at least a 10.5 broad jump. But for him to come in, this guy didn't play very much this season. I know that there's some, on-field, off-the-field issues, and I know he didn't really get along great at the start of the season with the LSU coaching staff. But I mean, if you don't have the production, the combine's really a way for you to kind of show what your athleticism is and show what you're made of, to really kind of get teams, that probably didn't have you on their radar, at least get them talking about you. And I think this is the absolute opposite and worst scenario for this guy. I mean, he didn't really have the production. When he did play, I think that there was times where, he'd take himself off the field. So again, I think that Kayshon Boutte, man, I mean, yeah, I hope that, maybe his pro day, he can turn it around and show that he has some of the better measurables than this. But for now, man, he's got to be my number one loser for the 2023 combine.
I agree. And what a absolute downfall this man has had. He was 5-star prospect coming out of high school, goes to LSU, where all the other studs are coming out, has one good season, and then this past season, everything kind of just falls apart for him. Only 500 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns in a whole season for LSU. I know LSU wasn't the greatest this year, but that's for a wide receiver one, as a lot of people projected before the season. Definitely not the performance they were looking for. But yeah, definitely lost everything, all the momentum he had, and any chance he had to go in the first round. He could rebound with outstanding performance in the pro day, but I don't see that happening.
Yeah, no, I agree right there with you, Paul. I mean, again, this guy had, pretty much one good game all season, and it was against Georgia. So, going at the end of the season, it looked like he had an opportunity to kind of come to the combine, test out well and potentially push himself into the front, first round, and push him as a fringe, top 4, top 5 wide receiver in the class. That's, actually relatively thin. But yeah, no. After this combine, I'm significantly down on him, and I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't even go until potentially late day 2 to early day 3, just on the mere fact that he did have a decent production. I believe it was his sophomore season. But yeah, man. So Kayshon Boutte, man, that's my number one loser. My second one would have to be Kenny McIntosh out of Georgia. I mean, the running back, listed at 6'1", 210. I thought he was going to come in. Not necessarily test out great in the 40, but 4.62, not necessarily a great factor to have. I mean, the guy did perform pretty well at Georgia, but I mean, he was getting blocking from potentially 2 first round picks this year at the tackle position. I think that he's kind of been put into a backfield where several guys get to eat, but I think that coming in, uh, running a 4.62 40. I don't know. I don't think that really screams that this guy prepped for the combine very well. And again, in a deep running back class, I don't see how coming in and performing like he did, how he's going to be able to make a lock for a potential day 2 pick. So again, Kenny McIntosh, I thought he was going to go potentially mid to third, late third rounder. I wouldn't be surprised now if he doesn't go until the 5th or 6th.
I completely agree. He did have a couple good games. I'd argue that maybe he didn't have as much time to perfect a 40-yard dash since they played a little longer than everyone else did. But again, he still had 2 months to refine that 40, that technique. Um, we'll see what the more the actual game footage that comes out, or um, what the pros say and how he's going to perform. But I do agree that 40 is definitely not something that you want to draft or you want to look for in a running back in the modern NFL. That is for sure.
No, I absolutely agree, man. Again, with how deep of a class this is, man, I think that it's tough to not come in prepared, man. Right there with you.
All right, moving on to my losers. First, I do have Jordan Addison, who was ranked as the number 1 wide receiver prospect coming out of USC by way of Pittsburgh. He just disappointed all the way around. Didn't think he was ever the biggest guy, but measuring in at 5'11", didn't definitely wasn't that impressive. You like to see anything bigger than that. But if you are that size, you got to be a burner, or you got to you really have to have something special. 173, and I know Devontae Smith isn't that big, and he's still dominant. Devontae Smith is different. He's just such a great route runner. Jordan Addison only clocked a 4.49. Again, that's pretty fast for most people. But as far as the NFL terms, you'd like to see low 4s to 4.3 at the wide receiver position, and especially since you are undersized. He had a 1.6 10-yard split, which was worse than at least 25. I was trying to look on the NFL's combine website, and it doesn't even show his stats because there's so many other wide receivers that are better than him. Um, I think that 10-yard split is really where you're going to get that shake and get that guy off you. So you like any of those short to medium routes, he's not going to. The corners are just going to beat him. They're going to keep up with him. Can't lose anybody in that. And then you only had a 34-inch vertical. Again, it's not terrible, just not impressive. I don't think he really solidified. I don't think he is the wide receiver one anymore. I think uh, he may be passed up, but come draft season, we'll see with this pro day. What do you think about the Jordan Addison being the number one loser?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that he definitely took a knock from this combine. To me, man, I still think that he solidifies himself as a top 3 or top 4 wide receiver in the class just because of the production. I mean, this guy was the number one wide receiver going into the season. Again, I just think that, maybe his size is a little bit of a weakness, but I mean, I still think that coming in, 5'11", 173, that's small, but I think you could work with it like Devontae Smith. Now, do I think that he, proved a point by, using, speed apparently was one of his strengths, and to come in and only run a 4.49, or, essentially a 4.5. I mean, that's not really a great way to capitalize on your speed. But I mean, what I really think will happen is I think this guy will go into his USC Pro Day. I think he'll be a little bit more prepared on that 40, and I wouldn't be surprised if he brings it down to the low 4.4s. But I'm right there with you again. I think that the 10-yard split wasn't anything special. Again, his vertical wasn't very great, but I mean, it wasn't really poor. I think that he came out just kind of average, but we'll see, man. I think that this guy still, his production kind of in the tape speaks for itself. Now, do I think that with that kind of 40 and that kind of vertical, he has what it takes to play on the outside still? I think that kind of gave me some red flags there. So maybe this guy, and pending his pro day, maybe teams start to talk and consider, maybe pushing him into the slot and making him a slot only kind of guy, which definitely, to me at least, hurts his stock quite a bit.
Agreed. Moving on to my next loser, and it's not so that he is a loser, any means. He didn't perform. Quite literally, he tweaked his hamstring the night before the combine. Didn't feel confident going, so he didn't perform. He did weigh in less than people anticipated. Of course, I'm speaking about Miles Murphy, edge out of Clemson. Everyone thought he was a thicker kind of guy, kind of more of a 3 tech, 3 to an edge kind of guy. He came in at 258. So a little less than people thought. And then him not performing, I think he just got passed up by some other guys. There were studs in Nolan Smith, who was kind of a fringe late first, early second, due to his injury concerns and being a little older. Goes out there and blazes a 4.3, almost as faster than most of the wide receivers in the class. And then just other guys. I mean, there was trying to think of the Northwestern guy. What's his name? I'm not going to try to pronounce the name because I won't be able to call him Double A. That dude, he ran like a 4.6 as a kind of more of an interior guy.
Adebawore.
Kind of, yeah, Adebawore. He ran that 4.5, 4.6 range for a kind of a 3. Where I project Miles to be.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I mean, dude, the guy. So, Adebawore, I brought it up right here. I mean, dude, this guy ran a 4.49 40-yard dash, right? I mean, this guy is pretty much 282 pounds. This is, an additional 25, 30 pounds on his frame than what Miles Murphy's packing. So I'm right there with you, man.
Right. So that concludes today's winners and losers from the 2023 Combine. Next, we'll go ahead and move into our resident draft specialist, Tim, and his big board.
Yeah, guys. So kicking off with my big board, man. I know that this season is going around. Off season's kind of taking off. So being that it is a draft board, this is kind of taking place with, or kind of including what we have with our positional value, along with just my guys to truly stand out. So really kind of kicking it off, not in a necessary order, but to me, I think that Bryce Young, again, in a rocky quarterback class, I think this guy really can provide teams with the day one starter. I think he has the intangibles and the brains to really step into any system, pick the offense up, without any questions, and really be that guy. Again, I know everyone's nervous about his size. He didn't really come in weighing much less than what a Kyler Murray did. So I think that Kyler Murray, being that his injury was due to his knee, and I think he's previously had some injuries due to ankle related issues. I don't really think that size is really going to be a deterrent in his play. I think that I think that he's truly going to be my QB1 until someone kind of proves me wrong here. Number 2, I got Jalen Carter. I mean, this guy is a complete disruptor up the middle. I think to have an interior defensive lineman like him really helps build your defense. When edge rushers are kind of coming, not necessarily a dime a dozen, but if you're able to get to the quarterback in a quick distance and a shorter distance, which an interior defensive lineman can do if they're that disruptive, I think that's way more impactful and way more beneficial than an edge rusher. So I'm going Jalen Carter with my number 2 there. Will Anderson at number 3. I mean, again, this guy just an absolute monster. He's had the production at Alabama playing against the top SEC tackles. I think that this guy is close, I guess, second or third to Jalen Carter. I think that he's going to be the top edge drafted off the board. Not much more to say there. Number 5, I got to go C.J. Stroud. At first, I used to not really think of him as a big top 1, top 2 quarterback. Again, his performance against Georgia really kind of opened my eyes to him. He had a pretty good combine. I think that if he ran the 40 and did pretty well at that, I think that would have helped out his draft stock just a tad. Coming in at number 6, Devin Witherspoon, man. This guy is just a lockdown corner. If you haven't seen his tape, I highly recommend you do so. This guy, just no teams ever wanted to throw at him because he was that big of a standout. Number 7, I got to go with Brian Branch. I think that this guy can really come in and play that nickel slot corner position to even loading up the box or even potentially even playing deep. I mean, this guy is very versatile. He played all over the field at Alabama. Again, Brian Branch there at number 7. Number 8, I got to go with Will Levis. I know he's got a little bit of a rocky background with people. They think that why couldn't he beat out Sean Clifford at Penn State? I think that he just wasn't given really the right opportunity. I think Will Levis could have done well there. I think that he did really well at Kentucky this past season. I know that some people kind of raised some red flags. I think that if you look at his performance, if when he doesn't have pressure and doesn't have guys crawling down his back. I think he did pretty well. I think he's a smart guy. I think he has, a lot of arm talent. I just think that he needs to be put in a good system and he could, potentially perform and be one of the best, if not the best quarterbacks out of this draft class. Going at number 8, I got Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech. I think this guy is an absolute monster when it comes to his size profile. I will say I think I did kind of hurt his stock a little bit not performing in the combine. I know that he is still recovering from a fractured foot, so I do wish him a speedy recovery, and I hope that in his pro day, he kind of puts together some good numbers and tests out well, so teams can kind of take note of that and bring him back into a top 5 lock. I got at number 9 here. I got to go Christian Gonzalez, the cornerback out of Oregon. This guy is just an absolute freak. He tested out like a freak. I think that he's going to be a good day 1 corner in the NFL. I think that when someone cooks you your first game, I think for you to come back and play the way he did for the remainder of the season, I think it just says a lot and speaks a lot. And then at number 10, I got Paris Johnson Jr. I think that he's my number 1 tackle on the board. Broderick Jones does have a little bit, coming behind him, having a good combine. But I think Paris Johnson Jr., man, I think that he's a really good NFL tackle. I think that everything that he does just translates well. And if I'm not mistaken, he's just a really good guy as well, smart guy. I think he does a lot for his community. And if I'm not mistaken, he's also a writer for the local Ohio State paper. So again, not working with some average Joe there. Definitely a smart guy. So Paul, I mean, that's my top 10 list. I'm including positional value in there. What are your thoughts about my top prospects there?
I do like that extra little commentary you threw in there about Paris Johnson. Although you miss the fact that he has 36-inch arms, biggest in the combine. But I do like this. I do like your big board here. I do think Bryce Young is at quarterback 1. I know the size has been the biggest issue with him, but I guess I heard many draft wizards say, "Show me one clip where his size really mattered." You can't. because he just gets it done. And it's not like he's playing. The big critique is that Kyler can't see over the line of scrimmage, which he really can't. But again, Bryce Young plays at Alabama. It's not like they have, a bunch of short offensive linemen at Alabama. They got NFL guys at Alabama, so he can throw just fine. He maybe not be able to see, but he can. He's just that smart where he knows his receivers are going to be there.
I mean, I think he can see, man. I think that Alabama's offensive line wasn't very great this year, and I think he still did, an outstanding job performing the way he did. I do want to note one quick thing though, too. I mean, I've read some articles stating that teams, typically whenever they're done playing on a Saturday, typically Sunday or I believe it's Monday morning, they usually have a scouting report of the next team ready to go with plays, giving some measurables of the opponents. So apparently Bryce Young every Monday for the past 2 years has come in on Monday morning, already reviewing that on Sunday, if not Saturday night, and has already prepped and knows all the game plan of what they're going to do. So he's already going into practice knowing, hey, this is what we need to call for this, coverage and for this read. And apparently he's even gone to the offensive coordinators and stated, hey, I think that this might be a better solution, or, hey, we should take a look at this. And they've actually adapted a lot of his suggestions. So again, I think that this guy really has the brains. He has the arm talent. He's got the elusiveness and the mobility. Again, I think that if this guy was 6'2", 6'4", I mean, this guy would be a lock at number one. Yeah, that's all I got to say with Bryce Young, man.
Dude just loves ball. He knows ball, and that's propelling him to that number one pick. But I do think he's still that top guy. But going on to number two, Jalen Carter. I mean, absolute unit there in the middle. Over 300 pounds, and he runs like he's 250. Eat up double teams. He's such a great pass rusher, great against the run. We'll see how the off-field stuff plays, but purely based on production and talent, I'd almost argue that I think he's maybe number one, but being a D tackle, I can see why you put him at two there. Going on to Will Anderson. Absolutely love Will Anderson. Don't really care for Alabama at all, but this guy is just an absolute gem of a human being. I've heard some interviews with him. He just loves his mom. I mean, most people do, but he volunteers at women's shelters. Like, this dude's just an outstanding guy, and someone that if you were drafting him, you'd feel confident drafting that kind of guy and having him around the locker room, having him as the face of your new franchise. Or facing your franchise in terms of the defensive side of the ball. And then moving on to 4, C.J. Stroud. Being a biased Ohio State fan, putting that aside, he had a great performance at the Combine. I don't think he really needed to run the ball. That's kind of his big critique, is that he's more of a statue. But he doesn't really need to run the ball at Ohio State. They get the ball out quick. They have, 2 day 1, day 2 tackles on either side, so he had great pass protection. So he really didn't need to run. And then the one game he did against Georgia, he proved that he can run. I mean, he's not just a statue back there. Devon Witherspoon, love it, 6-foot corner. Always loved the size there. Had great tape. Love that selection. Brian Branch, I've heard, is one of the best defenders. He just knows. He didn't test out the greatest. I think he had like a 4.6. But 4.6 40. But as far as just him being an athlete and knowing how to play football in that slot kind of rover territory, dude just gets it. He understands this. One thing I will say, going on to your Will Levis pick, I am a Will Levis. I do not believe in Will Levis. I think he's just that glorified pretty white boy that they need to put up in that top 10. He's got the talent. As far as an arm, I think his accuracy is questionable, and he really didn't perform any big games. He didn't perform well. I know he had some lack of talent on that Kentucky roster. I know his left tackle gave up a ton of sacks. Didn't have any wide receivers after Wan'Dale Robinson left in last year's draft, but I still don't think I think he's getting a little overhyped because he has an arm and he has good hair. And I know the media loves that, so I still don't think he's. I think he's almost. Quarterback.
He's
for me at this point.
Dude, he's a smart guy, man. That's all I gotta say. He's a smart guy. I think that you bring up the accuracy issues, but again, I think it helps when you have better offensive line plays and better wide receivers around you. I understand, there are some concerns with him, but I think that again, his size, his speed, I think that he has the arm. I mean, this guy kind of. I know everyone wants to comp everyone to Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, but I think that this guy really does have a little bit of a mix of it all, and he's got the brain to really kind of come in and learn behind someone maybe for a few games, and really pick up an NFL offense. I know that Anthony Richardson performed incredible. I mean, the guy was a freak coming out of the combine. I mean, he set some records if I'm not mistaken. I just think that dude, 53% completion percentage. That's not good. In fact, that's pretty terrible. I mean, I'm not saying that that's something that prevents him from getting drafted top 10. I mean, again, I think that the combine helped a lot. I think seeing him throw to open receivers in his underwear was amazing. I just don't think that. I just don't think that I think that if Anthony Richardson was to play any other position, this guy would be a lock top 5 pick. But being that he does, is a quarterback, I mean, it sounds bad to put it that way. It's just, I mean, the guy, again, 53% completion percentage is not very good. And again, I know with Josh Allen, they fixed it. I know that, some other quarterbacks that, they've attempted to fix it and it's worked out okay. I just think that, Anthony Richardson, he can be a slinger just like Will Levis. I still think that Will Levis is just a little bit more pro ready. And I think he's just a little bit more valuable when it comes to having, the ability to pick up an NFL offense as opposed to, college scheme.
I agree. I think Anthony Richardson does get a lot of flack. I know that 53% completion rate comes out a lot. I mean, who again, kind of in the same boat that Will Levis has. Who's his receivers? He has nobody at his receiving core to throw to. He was in a predominantly RPO style offense as a first year starter as well, so that he did run the ball a lot. So he didn't. Yes, he didn't have the greatest completion rate, but he also had his wide receiving core had one of the higher drop rates as a unit altogether. So it's not like he wasn't getting the ball there. It's just his wide receivers weren't helping him at all. Again, can't say that's any different than Will Levis because I'm sure like I said, I don't know any of his wide receivers, so none of his guys performed. But going down to Tyree Wilson, that's your number 8. I think this guy is fantastic. He is a very long, 6'6", big wingspan. It's going to be an immediate run stopper right at the bat. He still needs to work on his pass rush, even though he did have more pressures, which I've been hearing is a little more important than sacks, even though sacks is a more enjoyable stat to enjoy. But I mean, right off the bat, he's a great run stopper. Big, long arms, strong dude, can really block shed and get to that backfield. And then Christian Gonzalez at 9. Again, like I said before, I think he's CB1. He's got the height, he's got the speed, he's got the weight. He has great tape. Didn't put up a lot of INTs, which again, that's some people only live and die by the INT number. Trayvon Diggs, but I think he's got definitely he's a great prospect at that cornerback. I think any team drafted in the top 10 that needs a corner would absolutely love him. And then going down to your number 10 spot, Paris Johnson Jr. You kind of said it all there before. Great dude, great athlete, big long arms, and he's just a mauler, man. He's tackle number 1. I think he's the most polished guy. He may not have the highest ceiling. I think Broderick Jones could have a little bit higher ceiling, but I don't think he didn't look as fluid as Paris Johnson doing those funny little underwear routes. But I do like this. Other than that,
yeah, no, I'm right there with you, man. I think that Paris Johnson is definitely my offensive tackle 1. I think that he has a lot of potential to potentially be a top 10 pick. But with Tennessee sitting there at 11, I know everyone mocks it to him. I know it's not the most sexy forecast, but I mean, I don't see where Tennessee goes to a different direction there. But yeah, so I think that really wraps up my big board. So Paul, I mean, any other comments or questions, man?
no, I think you did a good job there. I think it's time to go ahead and move on to our mock draft.
Sounds good, man. I've been looking forward to this for this week, man. So it should be fun here. All right, so I'm going to go and share my screen. Kicking it off, we are going to be using PFF's NFL Mock Draft Simulator. This is just due to personal preferences. I don't know, Paul, if you have anyone else that you'd like to throw shout outs to, but PFF, man, I think that they really do have one of the most realistic drafts. I think that with them, I see that the status of the players definitely updates and changes. I think that the relative value when it comes to trades is pretty realistic. So I'll go ahead and kick it off, man. If you want to, I say we kind of do a, Paul, I'll let you go number one. I can go 2, 3. You go 4, 5. We'll kind of snake draft it in that order.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that. All right. So I'm picking for the Bears, who are on the clock. Bears kind of need best player available, but they are picking at that number one spot. They are sticking with Justin Fields, which I think is a good decision. He shows very good upside on the back half of the season. Want him to develop as a little more of a passer. I think getting him some help around him would definitely help him. He had to run for his life a lot of the time. With that being said, I've seen it mocked a lot where they trade with the Colts. I don't know if that's going to happen. I've seen a lot of them with now that they got offensive coordinator from Eagles who developed a dual threat style quarterback in Jalen Hurts. I think they are okay with waiting on at number 4 with Anthony Richardson performing so well and being a kind of a dual threat guy that you can build with. I don't see them moving up to 1, but who I do think will move up to 1 to overtake that number 1 overall position and kind of block any prospect of their division rival, the Colts, getting that number 1 quarterback. I think it's going to be the Texans moving up to number 1, and I make that selection.
And you think they're going?
And with the first overall pick, I do think they take Bryce Young. I think he is the safest quarterback prospect there is on the board. I don't think size is really going to affect him that much. And if I were DeMeco Ryan, you want to start your franchise off, he's going to be good. The other guys may have a higher ceiling than he may, but he's not going to. I don't see him being a bust.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, man. I think that Bryce Young is definitely, he's the guy in this year's draft. I would say, you mentioned that the Texans are going to trade up. I think that they might, but also, I mean, if I'm the Texans, is it really worth producing all that, putting up all that draft capital to move up, just one spot to go select a guy? I know that Bryce Young, might be number 1 on their board, but I could see them, both scenarios with them trading up or potentially staying put and seeing who falls to them at number 2 there.
But for that, or to argue that point, if you are the Texans sitting there at 2, you don't have to give up as much as other teams just to move up one spot. And if you don't move up and the Colts do, whoever that quarterback is that they think is number 1, you're going to have to play him, possibly for the next 10 years. And he's your division rival, so you got him twice a year, every year. So you don't really want to give him that opportunity to select kind of your demise almost.
All right, so picking for the Chicago Bears, again, I think that they need as much help on the defensive side of the ball as possible. I see that the Colts are sitting right here, but I do want to note that with the Cardinals need draft picks. I think that they're in a little bit of a rebuild or not necessarily a reorg, but more just I guess a reload. As Kyler Murray is still going to be recovering from his ACL injury throughout primarily the whole season of 2023. So if I'm the Chicago Bears, man, I'm going to say, okay, I just traded down with the Houston Texans, for Paul's pick here. I really will go with the Indianapolis Colts, and I know it's not going to be a large drop down, but I do see the Colts wanting to hop in here. I think that they'll offer a future first, and potentially, a second to this year. I think that by doing this, man, it gives I really think that it gives the Colts the player that they want on their board without having the threat of the Cardinals trading down with it, let's say a Vegas, Atlanta, or Carolina. And it also just kind of secures them as, they see Bryce Young going off the board. I think that they're going to be wanting to pick their guy. So if I'm the Colts, man, Will Levis does sound very, very, high on my clock here. But I will say, look, CJ Stroud, man, I know that the guy gets knocked for not being as athletic as the other quarterbacks in this draft class. But to me, man, I think that if you get this guy, with Jonathan Taylor in the backfield, some O-line play that, can pick it up, I think that he can learn a little bit with Matt Ryan there, even though I'm sure that they're probably going to let him go. But I hope they don't, because I do think that CJ Stroud might need just a few games just to sit and learn the offense. But I'm going to go CJ Stroud, man, to the Indianapolis Colts here at number 2.
I love that pick. I said, bias Ohio State fan. Um, would love for to see him go to the Colts. That offensive line had a down season. Jonathan Taylor had a down season. I think they could rebound their defense. They had a lot of banged up players. Shaq Leonard hardly played at all, and he's a game wrecker. I know Stephon Gilmore had some injury problems, and they just had some. They had an underperforming season. They should definitely not have been a top 4 draft pick for their team that they had.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. I think that they played poorly this year. I think that they again, I don't think they were that great of a team this year. I think their offensive line can definitely be revitalized into one of the top units it used to be. I think that they might need to just select some talent maybe a little bit later on in the draft and maybe attack some guys in free agency. But again, I think that their defense has some pieces. I think that what it really just comes down to is Matt Ryan just wasn't able to really put the ball to the outside receivers and get the ball to his outside receivers with potential lackluster guys. But I think that Alec Pierce does have potential going into his year 2, and then Michael Pittman Jr. I think that he's definitely a decent wide receiver to have. So I think that again, CJ Stroud, plugging him in there, letting him learn a little bit on the offensive side. I think that I think Shane Steichen is taking over as the Colts head coach. I think that the CJ Stroud would be a lovely prospect to have. Coming from Jalen Hurts. So going on to pick number 3, the Arizona Cardinals. I know I just got done with one trade, man, but I really don't think that the Cardinals are going to just sit there at 3 and pick the best defensive player. I know that they need one, man. I really do. I know that they need one. But look, man, when you have the Raiders or Atlanta right there, or Carolina coming in, man, I really think that they're going to look at a player and they're going to say, hey, could we do off with Jalen Carter and Will Anderson? Yeah, sure, that's great, right? But I think if you can go to Carolina and you can get a whole draft haul. I mean, again, I know that this is saying it has a 12%, but for Carolina to really move up 6 spots, I think that this is definitely going to be the cost. I think Carolina, man, coming in now, I think they're going to have to go with their quarterback. Again, I love Will Levis, man. I think that he's a great quarterback prospect. I think that he has the arm talent and he has the speed to go, potentially turn into a great NFL player. But I got to go Anthony Richardson, man. I think that,
Wow.
I know you're going to laugh, man, saying that again, off my big board, I had Will Levis as a top 10 guy. But dude, I think that Anthony Richardson, I think it makes sense. I think that they have a decent offensive line. They have a really good defense. And I know I think it's Deontay Foreman is a free agent. But I mean, I think that, with the running back talent, I think that, and as deep of a draft class as it is, I think if Carolina could pick one up later in the rounds, I mean, I think that all they are is just a quarterback who, again, needs to learn. And he can learn behind Sam Darnold maybe for a few games, let's say 4 or 5 games. But I mean, again, this guy's an athletic, specimen that could really go out there and perform, potentially as a Justin Fields like, or, even I mean, again, the arm strength's there. So I mean, this guy, if he can move around the pocket and really push the ball down the field, again, I think that they have the weapons all around him, and I think they have the defense around him to help support him. So again, I think that Anthony Richardson at number 3 just makes a lot of sense.
I like that pick. I do. I think bringing back the Cam Newton 2.0 kind of days. I think that's Carolina definitely likes like that mobile style quarterback. I think that's a good fit for the AR-15
I
there.
agree, man. I think the fans would love it. I think that Cam Newton would love it. I think that again, I just think it makes a lot of sense. I don't think he's well polished. Again, I don't think he's as good as Cam Newton. I don't think he'll be as good as Cam Newton coming out of school. But again, I think that this guy has the measurables to really be a beast at the next level.
I completely agree with that. All right, moving on to pick number 4 with the Chicago Bears. they traded back already. They got an extra draft pick. Now it's just time to take the best player available. Um, I'm still iffy on Jalen Carter with this situation. I don't think it's going to be too serious, but just as it stands right now, I think um, Will Anderson is the safest draft pick you'll have. Like I said before, he is just a great guy all around. He's going to be the face of your franchise, and I think he's the move. He had the production. He didn't test great. Um, you would like him to see him run a little faster for being undersized. Like he's only 6'3". But I mean, he had the production. He added the production to back up his rather unimpressive performance. But I think he's still the number one edge rusher, and that's obviously the most important position. Speaking defensively,
Yeah, no, I love that pick, man. I think that the Bears need just a player on that defensive line that they could kind of take pride in. I think that Will Anderson really gives them that true edge that they've needed. I will say, man, again, his combine, I know it wasn't like the best, but it wasn't poor. I mean, the guy went out there and tested pretty average. I think that, being that he was just such a monster in the SEC and the production that he's had for Alabama, I don't really think that the combine's much of a knock to him. I still think that this guy's going to be a top 5 pick easily.
oh, 100%. Yeah, I definitely don't think he's going to drop out of anybody's. He's not going to be overthrown as the best edge. Especially Nolan Smith, his performance. That's what you would like to see with Will Anderson. Like if he did that, I think you make a question for him being the number one pick, even if you are the Bears and you don't, you have that quarterback trade down spot. I think if he had a Nolan Smith performance, that would be the bona fide lock at number one. Moving on to pick number 5, by way of the Denver Broncos, we have the Seattle Seahawks. Uh, they need a lot of work on their defensive line. Pete Carroll said it in his exit interviews. That's one of the things he definitely needed to work on in that offseason. Uh, I've seen it been mocked all the time, so I'm just kind of stick it there. Tyree Wilson, Texas Tech,
Wow.
solidified that edge. Again, he's going to be a great run stopper right off the bat. He has that pass rush upside. Being a 6'6", long arms, I think he's going to be a great developmental guy. Pair him up with Jordan Brooks, another Texas Tech defender. I think they have a good linebacking core. If you do an outside linebacker and edge, however they make him, that's where he's going to fit nicely.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good pickup. I mean, I will say though, with Jalen Carter on the board, man, I think that makes it tough. But I mean, again, Tyree Wilson, no discount to him. I mean, this guy's a beast. I think he's going to fit in really well on the edge side. I think he is a Pete Carroll kind of guy. But I mean, if you're going to leave Jalen Carter up, man, I think that with the Lions, I love Devin Witherspoon. I think that he's a great player. But I mean, dude, you can't pass up on a talent like Jalen Carter there. So I'm going Jalen Carter for the Rams. I think you can kick him inside with Lee McNeil. I think that he helps out with James Houston and with Chase or Aiden Hutchinson on the outside. I think that's a pretty scary D line. I think that Jalen Carter also helps with their run game, so he helps make their linebacking core a little bit better. And this is a deep corner class, and with the Lions having a second first round pick, I think that they could kind of attack that position later. So that brings me to the Las Vegas Raiders, man. I mean, I don't see, you know, how you can go on and move on from Derek Carr and think that Will Levis is going to be your next option and be much better. But, dude, I don't think that they're going to just rock with a quarterback that they have. I believe it's Jarrett Stidham at the moment. So I got to go Will Levis, man. I think that, if you could potentially get him teamed up and running routes or having Devontae Smith run routes for him, I think that it's something that would only benefit him to learn from someone like Devontae Smith, who's worked with a future Hall of Fame quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. So again, I think Will Levis has potential. I think he's a smart guy. The Raiders, though, tricky franchise, man, tricky franchise for sure.
100%. I probably would have mocked up a defensive player, but with Derek Carr leaving in free agency or requesting a trade and then getting cut due to his cap going to the Saints, I do think they kind of have to address that quarterback position. So I think Will Levis is going to be the next guy up. But I mean, his couple knocks from his college days, not having a good tackle. Now he has Colton Miller, who one of the better tackles in the league, and then not having weapons. That's all they have on the Raiders as weapons. They got Devontae, Darren Waller, Hunter Renfro. They just franchised Josh Jacobs. They got a great arsenal there. He's going to be in the best chance that he can to succeed there. Moving on to number 8 with the Atlanta Falcons. It says their number one QB needs our quarterback. I'm going to make the bold assumption that they are going to somehow get Lamar Jackson after he was just franchise tagged. I think they are the one team that needs to be trading for him. In that requirement, you do need to give away 2 first-round picks. So actually, I'm going to go ahead and trade this year's first and next year's first to the Baltimore Ravens in lieu of signing Lamar Jackson.
All right, Paul, the trade went through, so now you have the Baltimore Ravens on the clock there, pick number 8.
All right. At the number 8 selection with the Baltimore Ravens, obviously you have a big gap at quarterback. I don't think you necessarily need to address it right now. I don't think Tanner McKee is quite there. The other guys are just, I don't think they're top 10 draft kind of guys. I do think they need to go ahead and lock down that secondary in Devon Weatherspoon. I think pairing him with Marcus Williams, Kyle Hamilton, and Marlon Humphreys, I think that's an elite secondary. Help that pass rush out by getting coverage sacks. So I'd go Devon Weatherspoon.
Yeah, no,
CB1.
I like that pick, man. I think that helps them a lot. I know they have David Ojabo from Michigan coming back next year, who was potentially a top 20 pick until he tore his Achilles. So I think that, again, you get Devon Weatherspoon and you get Ojabo back. That's essentially getting like 2 first-round picks as rookies right this year. So, good pickup, man. Again, I know that the quarterback position is going to be empty there. I guess you're going to rely on, I believe it's Tyler Huntley and see what he can do. But yeah, I mean, next year's draft is definitely deep at quarterback. I know that there's a lot more guys, but in order to get there, man, you do have to have a lackluster record. So I guess that you're really banking on the Falcons to do poorly with Lamar Jackson, or you're really hoping that Atlanta is just not able to perform with Tyler Huntley.
100% agreed. All right, moving on to number 9. With the recent trade, we are now selecting for the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona Cardinals need a lot. They have a lot of spots to fill. I do think one of their best and most important needs is offensive line. They have an aging Kevin Beachum, and then just injuries all over the board. So I think they do need to be addressing that. And as much as I don't think he's the number 1 tackle, I think it does help Kyler going Peter Skoronski. He's only 6'4", a little smaller than the other guys. Will help Kyler be able to see over him if he's rolling out that way. And he's not saying he's a bad guy. He's a stud out there. Watching his combine, he ran well. He was moving fluidly. He a little bit shorter than anyone's. That's about it.
Yeah, no, I like that pick, man. I think that Skoronski has a little bit of flexibility to play guard. So if they need to, they can kick him inside for now and eventually develop him into a tackle if needed. But no, I do like that pick. I think that at number 9, it could be a potential trade down candidate again. I know the Cardinals are really trying to get as much draft capital as they can.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I do like that pick, man. I think that's a perfect player fit for the Cardinals there. For pick number 10, I got to go with the guy that was in my top 10 on my big board. I got to go with Brian Branch, man. I think that with the Eagles losing Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I think that this guy Brian Branch can just fill that mold, and they wouldn't skip a beat. I know that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson had an amazing season, but I think that if you put Brian Branch in this defense and in this scheme, I think that he's going to go out there and perform really well. They still have a little bit of holes, that they need to fit, such as, corner. I think their corner number 2, James Bradbury, is a free agency. I don't think he's coming back. I know that, their offensive line, if I'm not mistaken, I think Jason Kelsey's probably retiring on running back. But again, now that you guys, solidify, again, I'm a Cowboys fan, but now that you solidify your Chauncey Gardner-Johnson replacement, you can attack corner with your second first round pick. And again, with the Cowboys needing wide receiver help, the Giants not having, Lord knows whoever. I mean, I think that really the only team you have to worry about on the wide receiver end is is the Commanders, and I mean they don't even have a really reputable quarterback just yet. So I think that if you have a good safety, I think that goes a long way. And again, you could tack corner later in the draft or even potentially in the second or third round, because it really is a deep corner class. So with pick number 11, the Tennessee Titans, man, I think that this is just something, again, another top big board guy on my list. Got to go Paris Johnson Jr. I think that, it's mocked all the time for him to go to the Titans. I think it just makes the most sense, man. I think that if you're really going to try to build your offense around running the football, I think Paris Johnson Jr. can do that. I think he can develop a little bit more as a pass blocker, but I think that he's got a pretty high ceiling to be a starting, offensive tackle for 10, 12 years.
I agree. Now, just to kind of put a little pin on that, this at the time of the recording, Derrick Henry has not been traded, but it's been reported that he is actively being shopped around. He only has one more year in his contract. He has an older running back that is going to require a heavy salary. What would you do? Would you change your selection if they were to have already traded? Say they didn't have any picks. I doubt Derrick Henry is going to go for a top 10 pick in this year's draft, at least. But if they were to trade away, maybe they're not focusing on the run game anymore. Maybe they're kind of diversifying, going some other way.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, man, again, if they decide not to go with him, or if they decide to trade Derrick Henry, I think that if you really look at their team, I mean, they don't have the wide receiver play to really pick up and start being a pass happy team. So I mean, really, I think that in trading Derrick Henry, I know that he has been a huge pillar to their offense. And I think that that's someone that looking at, you can't really say, oh, if you remove him, you could just skip a beat and continue on. But I don't see them really trying to attack a running back this early or a wide receiver this early, being that this running back class is very deep. And this wide receiver class, I mean, I do have a few guys that I like, but I know you do too, Paul. But I think that with Ryan Tannehill at the quarterback and at the helm, I mean, I'd rather just give opportunities to I think their backup is like Hassan Haskins or Dontrell Hilliard or someone like that. I think that if you give him some opportunities along with maybe a day 2 or day 3 running back, I think that solidifying your offensive line helps, and I think it also helps maybe in the development of Trayvon Burks. So I still think that offensive tackle is definitely their biggest need. Taylor Lewan just left, and they cut him; he's a cap casualty. I think that again, you go tackle here. You can address the wide receiver in free agency. You can address the cap issue later on. But for now, man, I think that you got to build up that offensive line.
I agree. Definitely can't go wrong with an offensive lineman that's arguably one of the better guys in the class, with or without a running back. Moving on to number 12 with the Houston Texans. Just got their quarterback of the future. They do have a good receiving core. I think they can definitely increase it. I'm going to go ahead and give Bryce Young his new number 1, Quentin Johnston. An absolute freak of an athlete. Measured in at 6'2" as opposed to the rumored 6'4". Had some drop issues going through, but I still think he is an absolute athlete. I think he'll definitely be that number 1 guy, barring John Mechie coming back and taking over, leaving where he left off. But I think that's get Bryce Young his weapon.
No, I like that pick, man. I really do. I think that they have John Mechie coming back. I think that Bryce and John have potential some chemistry there, and I think if you get Quentin Johnson in that system, I mean, that's a scary wide receiver room for your rookie quarterback.
Especially you are losing Cooks. He's wanted out. So
yeah, I assume they're going to trade him before the draft even starts, but we'll see, man. We'll see.
I agree. All right, and picking in at number 13, we have the New York Jets. This is after a proposed trade of Aaron Rodgers going to the Jets in lieu of the 43rd overall pick, the 112, and a round 2 from next year. I think Aaron Rodgers still got a lot left in the tank. He's coming off 2 back-to-back MVP seasons. Had a down year this year, but I still think he's got it in him. quarterback you can kind of play. Tom Brady proved that you can play forever. Uh, but with that being said, I do think they definitely need to protect him. Their offensive line is a little bit shaky. Mekhi Becton is a great guy, absolute stud, but he's hardly on the field. I think they kind of go next best tackle available and get Broderick Jones, and stud out of Georgia. I think he's going to be a great anchor piece for them. And he definitely was a healthy, played a lot, had a lot of starts at Georgia, didn't have any major injury risk coming out. So I think that's definitely something they'll look for.
No, I like that pick, Paul. I really do. Um, looking at now at pick 14 for the New England Patriots, right? I know that they need wide receiver help, but I really don't know if Jackson Smith and Jigba is really going to be the guy that really takes in the distance. Their cornerback room, I wouldn't be surprised if they select a corner. I mean, Christian Gonzalez really has slipped, but I just don't know if he really fits their seam. But I really would say, man, I think that the guy that's going to really perform for them and is a big Belichick kind of guy, multi-sport athlete, I'm going to go Lucas Van Ness, man. I think that he's going to fit in as an edge rusher for New England, and I think he'll do fairly well. I think that he's going to kind of provide them a little bit of a pass rush as well as just a disruption to their interior that if they want to kick him into a 3-tech that I think he can provide.
I do.
Yeah.
I do like that versatility of that where you can kick them inside. I don't think it says they need edge rush. I really don't think they need edge rush. They had 3 guys with 50 plus pressures this past season. So I really don't know why they say necessarily edge, but I do like Lucas Van Ness. I think he is an absolute stud in that kind of versatility to go play inside a little bit and still not be a liability and still be an absolute, basically an edge rusher from the inside. I think that is a great versatility piece that I do think good old Bill Belichick will love that.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. I think with the Packers here, man, again, this is a pretty easy pick. Need wide receiver. I doubt that they do this, man, but I think that JSN going to the Packers, I think that makes a lot of sense. It helps Jordan Love with another weapon. So now you have Christian Watson, JSN, and maybe in round 2 you attack another player, potentially a tight end.
I do think that they'll go for a tight end later because I think it is pretty clear that they're losing Robert Tonyan in free agency, but that'll come with time. All right, and then picking at number 16, we do have the Washington Commanders. The Commanders, they have some holes on offense. They do need a new quarterback. They have a decent offensive line. It's not great. They have a great pressure. They got a couple good safeties in Cameron Curl. They do have a very glaring issue at that cornerback position. There's going to be a lot of new wide receivers. They got to guard A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith twice a year. They got CeeDee Lamb, whoever they draft, twice a year. And then whoever Daniel Jones is throwing to, those no-name guys, they got him twice a year. So I do think they go Christian Gonzalez, they're going to be very happy he slid all the way down here to number 16. Like I said before, I think he's the number 1 guy, but maybe other people like the other ones better. All right, and then that goes to number 17 with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I do think they need a lot of help, too. They need some offensive line guys. But they also do need corner, and I think it is just in the scriptwriters to have Joey Porter Jr. play for his dad's team. I think he is also a great prospect, big, long arms at corner, great press man guy. I think it'll fit just perfectly in that Pittsburgh defense. Bring back the steel curtain from the old.
No, I really do like that pick, Paul. I think that Joey Porter Jr. has been mocked a lot to go to Pittsburgh. I think that he just makes a lot of sense. I think he just makes a lot of sense for that team. I think he fills the need. I think he's a good plug-and-play starter. But yeah, now moving on to the Lions at pick number 18. Now that you've taken 2 of my best corners off the board, man, it's kind of tough. Again, you already kind of solidified your defensive interior. You do have some good edge rushers already. I mean, being into the Lions, this is a little bit of a luxury pick. I know that Jamal Williams is a free agent. I know that they do have DeAndre Swift, but he's been struggling to stay on the field. But I could not imagine, man, Bijan Robinson going to the Detroit Lions. I think that this would be a sexy pick for him. Again, I know it's a little bit of a luxury, but hey, you took the solidified player, top player with your top 10 pick. Now let's go ahead and fit someone that's going to really help explode and make that offense more dynamic. So I'm going Bijan there at 18.
I do think that is a good pick. I think they do need another corner to kind of round out that secondary. And they need just defensive help in general. But, I mean, you got to score points. And yeah, Smith has definitely not been the most injury healthy guy going along. So,
No,
best taking the best guy available.
yeah, no, I'm right there with you, man. Again, I think that Banks is, he's a good corner, man. I'm not sure if I really love him that early on. Yeah, pick number 18. But again, we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. I think that again, it's a very deep corner class. I think if you can really go for a player like Bijan with your second first round pick, and if I don't know if you recall, but if I'm not mistaken, already they've already traded for they traded the Rams to get up there. So I mean, if you really think about it, dude, Bijan is their first pick, and I mean they got Jalen Carter as the luxury there. So either way you put it, man, you're getting two solid players, two solid studs. So maybe they attack corner later on, but I think that Bijan makes a lot of sense for them and helps really explode that offense. For the Tampa Bay Bucks, man, I got to go Nolan Smith, man. They really didn't have a pass rush this year. I think if you can kind of put Nolan Smith, a young, good edge rusher on that team, which I know that they've been trying to fill in with, the likes of I think it's PJ Hall out of Houston. I think that Nolan Smith really gives them that athletic edge that they need to, kind of like a Hassan Reddick style that could potentially hop in there and get them some pressures and, actually produce a pass rush.
Yes, Nolan Smith is an absolute. He's a dog. I do think that is a great selection. I think they probably will lean a little more towards DB, losing Jamal. His name just blanked out of my. They have two corners, corner and safety that are leaving in free agents or that are free agents.
Jamal Dean.
They may Jamal Dean, yeah. So they're a little bit thin at corner, and that's what's kind of been their Achilles heel. They've had a lot of injuries in the secondary, so they give up a lot of more points than they should.
They're also losing Sean Murphy Bunting too, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Yeah. But Nolan Smith, I mean, he's a dog. I think he's kind of a Michael Parsons-esque kind of player. He's undersized, linebacker edge kind of guy, but just fast and an absolute animal. Hopefully he can stay healthy in the next level, though. All right, moving down to pick number 20. We have the second first-round pick, the original pick for the Seattle Seahawks. The first pick, we took Tyree Wilson, get a little edge pressure. I think they take the next best available defender, and that's Kalijah Kancey.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Pro comps to Aaron Donald. You cannot compare anybody to Aaron Donald. I'm sorry. That dude is one of one. I see the similarities. An undersized defensive tackle who runs pretty good, and he's awesome from Pitt. I get it. He's a stud. I'm not going to say he's not a stud, but Aaron Donald, you can't compare someone to Aaron Donald. That's just not allowed. But I think shoring up that interior offensive line, or that defensive line, I'm sorry, definitely a move they'll do so they can at least stop the run, because Lord knows they could not stop the run last season. One of the worst teams in the league at that.
I love it, man.
All right, we're skipping the forfeited pick by the Dolphins, moving on to the Los Angeles Chargers at 21. They're losing Keenan Allen in free agency most likely due to just cap space. They do have to look forward to signing Herbert most likely in the future. So I do think they go ahead and address the wide receiver opening that they have. I do think that their current Jordan Palmer can play the outside. I think they kind of need to address that little interior. So I do think they go Isaiah Flowers out of Boston College. Little muscle man out of that. I think they can plug and play in the slot, and I think he'll tear it up. Catch all those short yard Justin Herbert dump downs, and do just like Austin Eckler and take him for 60 yards and inflate Herbert's stats a little bit.
No, I love it, man. I love it. So with the Baltimore Ravens, man, I know you did a trade earlier, getting rid of and dumping off Lamar. Being able to pick up Devon Witherspoon is a huge pickup for him. I really think that their defense, I know that it says they needed edge, but I think that's pretty much solidified. I think that, when you have a guy like David Ajabo coming back off of injury. It's essentially a first round pick that they got this year. I still think they need to keep attacking the wide receiver position. Whoever their quarterback is that's going to step in and start this year. I think the only thing that helps them out is getting more talent around the position. So I got to say, Jordan Addison, man, I think that makes a lot of sense for them. You can still keep Bateman on the outside. I think Jordan Addison can kind of he has the opportunity to potentially go inside or out. I know that the testing didn't really help him very well in the combine, but I mean, again, CD Lamb didn't put up fantastic numbers in the combine, and he's still doing pretty well playing that potential slot and outside kind of mixture. So again, I think Jordan Addison to the Ravens makes a lot of sense there at 22, and then on to 23 for the Minnesota Vikings. Dude, I know that it's a deep cornerback class, but I really think that you just got to go with the best corner on the board. Let me take a look at who we got here at corner. I think it's safety too. Cam Smith, I think he makes a lot of sense for what the schemes that they run, but I think Deonte Banks, dude, I think that this guy's a little bit more of a safer pick. I don't think that he's going to be nowhere near a lockdown kind of guy, but I think that he will be a solid starting corner in the NFL.
And he did test very well at the combine. Had the number one overall vertical, second farthest long jump or broad jump. I'm sorry, at 11 feet 4 inches, and had a 4.35 40. So it's definitely not you're not settling for getting this guy. I think he's definitely going to be an athlete out there. AFC, you definitely need speed as well. So I think that's a good pickup there. All right, moving to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Great young team. I think they have a lot of good pieces. Definitely could improve on some aspects there. I do think one of their biggest gaps is going to be interior defense. They do have some good edge rushers in Trayvon Walker that they just acquired last year, and then also Josh Allen, who's a stud. I do think they go Brian Brees at Clemson. I love this guy. I think he is just an absolute unit in the middle. For being a 6'5", massive human being, he moves so well, very bendy. He gives you that edge rush type, but can do that from the interior. And I think that's kind of very rare. I know he had a little bit lackluster season, but I think Clemson as a whole did, so I'm not going to hold it over him. All right, moving on to number 25, we have the New York Football Giants. I see Dalton Kincaid sitting up there. I don't think they go Kincaid just because Bellinger, their rookie tight end from last season, he played really well, had a solid season. They just franchise tagged Saquon Barkley, so we don't need a running back, and they just got a long-term deal for Daniel Jones, so they don't exactly need to be looking at a quarterback. I do think they're just kind of best player available at the wide receiver position. To give Daniel Jones somebody to throw to because he has nobody at this time. I think my favorite pick would be Josh Downs, speedster out of North Carolina. He had kind of a lackluster 40 time. I was expecting him to have one of the higher accelerations and the higher short yard bursts, but didn't see that. I don't know if he was just not feeling good or whatever the case may be. Thought he may run 4.4, 4.3 even. Didn't do as well as I thought, but I think he's still going to be a stud. So we're taking him at number 25.
No, I like it. I think that Josh Downs really does help their wide receiver position. I know that they just got a guy last year, the guy out of Kentucky,
Wan'Dale Robinson.
So I know that those two are probably going to be splitting some slot role reps, but I think that both of them could be on this field at the same time. I think that Josh Downs is pretty electric with the ball in his hands. So I do like that pick. So now at pick 26 for my Dallas Cowboys, I got to go O'Cyrus Torrence. I know it's not the sexiest pick, man, but I think that if you get O'Cyrus Torrence, kick him in that left guard, you got a starting offensive line that's going to stay together for quite some time. I know Zach Martin's getting up there in age too, but I mean, I think that he still has 2 or 3 solid more, productive years ahead of him. But if you're able to get O'Cyrus Torrence, I think that you can, somehow keep Terrence Steele. That really just leaves, Tyron Smith as a swing tackle. And, Yeah, I think you're in pretty good shape if you have Tyron Smith as a swing tackle. I know the Cowboys do need cornerback help. I don't really love any of the guys off the board, but I do think that if you can beef up that offensive line, you just franchise tag Tony Pollard, maybe attack another running back later on in the draft. I think that really helps. And again, I think it helps get Dak back on track to be a potential MVP caliber kind of season. So for the Buffalo Bills, man, this is going to be a tough one. I know that they kind of need help a little bit on the defensive side and at edge rush. I do like Will McDonald a lot. Here's a guy that I really think that could step up on people's boards and start to kind of slowly hype up on there. I know that they've drafted a lot of edge rushers in the past and spent premium picks on them, but I think that if you're still not able to get an edge rusher, I still think you just got to keep attacking at it. I know that they have Von Miller on a deal this year, but I think Von Miller's deal is able to be a kind of a cap casualty at the end of next year. So I say go BJ Ojolari. I say put him up there in the edge group, and let's see if they can really get a pass rush that kind of bumps them over the edge and keeps them competitive against a Kansas City or Cincinnati.
I do agree. Yeah, they definitely they have some good young talent, but nobody's produced anything of note yet. So
And I think,
I do agree
yeah,
with
and I agree.
continuing that.
And I think you can't go wrong with more edge depth at least.
No, yeah, you always need pass rusher, especially when you got to play the Chiefs and the Bengals. Those are the teams that, as the Bills, when they're looking at their roster, they got to beat the divisional opponents, but when you're in the playoffs, you got to beat them. And the only way to stop Patrick Mahomes, well, there's no way to stop Patrick Mahomes. But the best way to do it is maybe try to get pressure on him and maybe hurt his ankle or something like that. But even though he's still gonna dot you up and run around you. All right, moving on ahead to number 28. We have the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati Bengals coming off a impressive season. They started off real slow, just like their Super Bowl run in the previous season. Kind of turned it up. Had a little bit of injuries with Jamar Chase, missed a lot of time. Um, I think they'll re-sign T. Higgins. I do think Joe Mixon is going to be cut, and we're not going to be able to be afforded. They have to kind of build their team around re-signing Joe Burrow because I think that is a must. So I don't think usually I would like to see BJ, or I'm sorry, Bijan Robinson if he fell. This is who I'd be taking with the Cincinnati Bengals. I think that would be absolutely electric. But since he's already been off the board, I do think they need a tackle. I maybe if they sign like a Taylor Lewan to a nice extension, now that he's a free agent coming off of injury, I think that could be something they do. But I do also, I think they need to address the tight end. Jamar Chase, if him and T. Higgins are covered up, I think Dalton Kincaid is that perfect guy that they need. They need that playmaker in the middle there. You can't cover everybody, and I know they do need the tight end since Hayden Hurst is a free agent, so they're not trying to spend big money on any new free agents that they don't need, so they can replace that with a draft pick. I think that's something they do. All right, and then moving on to number 29, the Saints by way of the 49ers. No longer need a quarterback. Today they just signed Derek Carr to a nice extension. So I think he's going to be the future of their franchise. As far as what they need now, they really need interior. They could also use anything defensive line. Marcus Davenport's coming up on free agency. Cam Jordan is 34 and had arguably his worst season since his rookie year. And I do think that's somewhere they address because they do have a nice secondary, so I don't think they need that. Their offensive line's pretty good and young, and they have talent at the receiver. And we'll see about Alvin Kamara. I do think they go Myles Murphy, who some people say he's a top 5 pick, and I think he's just going to drop. Again, not performing at the combine. He was a little bit of a drop on my board, but I think he's a perfect selection.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, man. I think that he was a 5-star recruit coming out of school, but I just don't see the production really being there, man. I don't see him really being a guy that can come over to an NFL team and just kind of take that edge over. But again, I like what you said. I mean, I think that they do need defensive interior help. I think that Myles Murphy needing to put on some weight, but I think that if he's able to put on 10 pounds, 15 pounds, come I don't think it's gonna be easy, but come this football season, I think that he could be someone that you could kick inside and play as that three technique and help out the Saints. I think that when you're looking at the NFC South, I mean, right now, they're really you're at a point where you kind of need to produce and really do well because you did just go out and get Derek Carr, but I mean, in this scenario, if Atlanta goes out and gets Lamar Jackson, I mean, that's gonna be tough to keep him contained, and I think that Myles Murphy can kind of do a little bit of both. So I like that pick a lot, Paul. For the Philadelphia Eagles, I think that they have a pretty good squad put together already. I think that being that they've already solidified their defensive tackle with Jordan Davis in last year's draft. I think that they potentially need another three technique, but I think that could potentially wait. I really think the cornerback too. I think that Emmanuel Forbes. I think this is some good value here. I think he's a good player that you could potentially plug in on the other side of Darius Slay. And I think he's someone that could start for you day one. And I think right there, you lose C.J. Garner-Johnson, you lose James Bradbury. I think that with your 2 first-round picks, you just replace those guys for much cheaper and much younger at the position as well. And that leaves me with the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that wide receiver is still a big need. I don't really like much of the guys that they have on the board. I think Tank Dell's a little bit overrated. I think he's a quick guy, but I don't really see him really producing at the next level, especially on the outside, which is what they need. So you know what I'm going to do, man? I don't think that they're going to be able to resign Orlando Brown and their right tackle. I think it's Josh Wiley. So I got to go Anton Harrison. A lot of people I know have him as potentially their tackle number 2 or number 3. I think that he's a good pass blocking tackle. I think you could plug him in and he could be a starter, help keep Mahomes clean. And, again, as Buffalo's continue to try to add pass rushers, Kansas City just needs to keep adding offensive line talent to offset that.
I do love that pick. I do think if we do cannot sign uh, Brown in the free agency, or if he's asking for too much, I mean, I think he's worth it. But again, we have other guys that have big contracts, so they have to make it work somehow. But Harrison, I mean, tackles from Oklahoma have great track record in the league, so it's definitely not something that you don't think he's going to produce, being that pedigree that he has there. Uh, Great performer at the combine, had a great 40. He can that means he can get out there and block on those screen passes, uh, which Kansas City loves to do. So I do like that pick there.
All right. So really quick before we do a quick recap, just to run through some players that are still on our board. Michael Mayer, the tight end out of Notre Dame, a good player. I think that if you can pick him up in the second round, that's a good steal there. Will McDonald, freaky talent at the edge position. Some people have him as a mid to late first. I still think that he's more of a day 2 kind of guy. DeJuan Jones, man, I know Paul, you're a big raver of DeJuan Jones. I think that he's a good player too. I think he's a good starting right tackle in the league. I think his size and his athleticism is pretty incredible. I think it just kind of comes down to, is he able to continue to strengthen up his core and potentially work more as a pass blocker as well. Deion Henley, another good player. Jack Campbell. There's one guy who I wanted to touch base on. Drew Sanders. Here we go. So Drew Sanders, another good linebacker. Some people have him as high as a top 15 profile. I think he's a good player. I just don't know if he's really worth it to go in the first round. So I see him more as a early day 2 kind of prospect. So on our recap, so Paul was picking as the Chicago Bears, traded down with the Texans one spot, able to select Bryce Young. Being the Chicago Bears in that situation, I traded down with the Colts to get C.J. Stroud to make sure that they got their guy. And then at pick number 3, I was the Arizona Cardinals. I traded down with the Panthers to get Anthony Richardson. At 4, Paul with the Chicago Bears decided to pick Will Anderson. I think it's a good pick to be at the edge rusher that he is. At pick 5, Tyree Wilson to Seattle. I think that's pretty much a no-brainer there. Jalen Carter at pick number 6 to the Rams or to the Lions via the Rams. I think that this is a little bit of a steal. I think it's going to help them out a lot. So for the Raiders, Will Levis. I think that they just need a quarterback to plug in there now that they lost Derek Carr. Pick number 8, Devin Witherspoon, solidify that secondary as they traded Lamar to Atlanta. And then with Carolina's pick, the Arizona Cardinals will pick Peter Skoronski. I think it's a great pick. Help pick up their offensive line for when Kyler comes back. Philly going with Brian Branch to help replace Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Tennessee Titans going Paris Johnson. No brainer there. Quentin Johnson going to the Houston Texans with their second first-round pick. I think that helps. The Jets in this scenario would get Aaron Rodgers via trade with the Packers. So they go Broderick Jones to help solidify that offensive line. New England Patriots going Lucas Van Ness. That's a total Bill Belichick guy. I think he's going to produce really well in that system. And then we got JSN going to Green Bay. Again, they don't really have a track record of picking wide receivers in the first round, but I think JSN would help Jordan Love improve his game whenever he does take that limelight. Going with Washington Commanders, Christian Gonzalez at pick number 16. I think that's a good steal there. I mean, this is a top 10 caliber player here. Pick 17, Joey Porter Jr. Taking place, going to where his dad played. I think that's a good pickup for both sides there. Bijan Robinson going to the Lions at pick number 18. Bijan's got to go somewhere. I think that the Lions, again, losing Jamal Williams, I think this helps a lot. And with DeAndre Swift never being able to stay healthy, I think that Bijan can kind of step in and be that number 1 bell cow running back. Pick number 19 going Nolan Smith. Again, Tampa Bay just needs edge rushers. I think that they really need to produce that pass rush in order to really kind of compete in NFC South. Kalijah Cansey going to the Seattle Seahawks. I think, again, you get another penetrator here at 3 technique to go along with Tyree Wilson. I think that this just helps their D-line out, which does, again, help their linebacker and their young secondary out as well. Miami's pick is forfeited. Zay Flowers, wide receiver, going to the Chargers, going to replace Keenan Allen in the slot. I think that's a great pickup. We've got Jordan Addison, wide receiver out of USC, going to Baltimore. Again, they need to keep attacking the wide receiver position for who their quarterback may be. Deontay Banks going to Minnesota. Again, they need cornerback help wherever they can find it. Brian Bresee going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think that's a really good pickup to have in the defensive interior. Josh Downs going to the Giants. Again, they need wide receiver talent. I think that helps a lot. Florida's O'Cyrus Torrence going to the Dallas Cowboys. I think this is going to help their offensive line and continue to build for the future. BJ Ojolari, the edge rusher, going to the Buffalo Bills. Again, they need to keep attacking that edge rusher position again, in order to compete with Kansas City and the likes of Cincinnati as well. Cincinnati going Dalton Kincaid, kind of to offset the pass rush threat of the Buffalo Bills. I think that Dalton Kincaid is a good check down guy for Joe Burrow. I think he's a better wide receiver option than Matthew Mayer from day one. Or from Michael Mayer from day one, and I think that he's going to continue to grow and potentially be a good stud for them. Miles Murphy, the edge rusher / 3 tech, going to the New Orleans Saints via the San Francisco 49ers. Again, I think that this is really going to be a good help, being that their defensive line is losing some talent this year in free agency, so good replacement there. Again, Eagles losing James Bradbury in free agency. They go Emmanuel Forbes from Mississippi State. It's a pretty good player. I think that he could step in and be a good number 2 to Darius Slay. And then pick number 31, final pick in the draft, going to Kansas City. It's going to be Anton Harrison. Again, I don't know if they're going to be able to resign both of their starting offensive tackles. I think that Anton Harrison is a good pass blocking guy who could step in and be a solid starter from day one. I'm not saying he's my favorite tackle in the draft, but I think that it just makes sense for Kansas City to continue to replenish as they continue to compete and hopefully build a dynasty. And with that being said, that wraps up our first mock draft. Paul, I mean, what do you think, man? You got any thoughts on any of these picks here that you want to say before we wrap up shop?
I think it was a great draft all around. I think the nice run of quarterbacks at the beginning, I think that will happen. I think there are some nice steals, especially Jalen Carter at 6. I think that is an absolute steal with the Lions. A couple other I'd like to point out. I think Van Ness, that is a good pick. I think that I do like him, that versatility. I know Bill Belichick loves his defensive guys. And then Joey Porter Jr., I think it's just scripted for him to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I would absolutely love that. But with that, being said, that is going to wrap up the inaugural episode of Two and a Half Takes podcast. We greatly appreciate anybody who ever listens. Leave us that awesome discourse in the comment section below. Let us know who had the half take. If you disagreed with anything we said, let us know about it. We'd love to talk. We love talking ball. So, again, my name is Paul.
And I'm Tim.
And you'll have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, y'all take care.
Peace.